I am currently helping my great-grandmother write her biography. When she was 24, she was sent to a concentration camp. You can ask her any question. Hello, Grandma Lena. What camp were you in and how did you survive? Actually, both of us are named Lena. Initially, she was sent to a labor camp in Melek, and then her sister and 2 of her daughters were transferred from there to another place. Melek was later turned into a concentration camp. They were moved to a factory where they produced Heinkel 162 airplanes. She can no longer remember the name of the facility. They survived because the Allied forces entered the camp and the German guards just left, fearing that if they executed the remaining prisoners, they would be shot. The same thing happened shortly before that in another camp where American forces shot about 50 guards after discovering a pile of bodies. How long was she in the camp and which country's troops liberated her? In total, it was about 3 years. American forces liberated the factory where she worked. What was the reason she was placed there? Deportation. They deported her to the country she came from. Essentially, they took her just because she was Jewish. How did her experience in the camp differ from those other camps her family was sent to? Aside from her father, the others were in labor camps. In those, they didn't kill you with gas but worked you to death. When people hear about camps, they immediately think of gas chambers, salt mines, and assembly lines for planes. While your great-grandmother was in the camp, did she have any faith, hope, goals, or perspectives that helped her find meaning in life despite the suffering? I understand this is hard to express in words, but can she explain what gave her the will to survive in such moments? I immediately recall Viktor Frankl's book Man's Search for Meaning. She just tried to cope with everything and keep her children alive. Considering how things were going, everyone already knew Germany was losing the war. Its end was just a matter of time. So, the goal was simply to survive. It was known that if a woman in the camp had only one child and the child died, she would be shot. Or if a woman had several children and they all died, she would also be shot. The camp guards knew that a woman who had lost her children presented a real danger to them. So my great-grandmother tried to survive with her daughters, and she also found solace in doing everything she could to ensure the planes they were working on had serious issues. What was the worst thing she had to do in the camp and the best thing that happened to her there? She was in a camp where almost all the prisoners died from overwork. However, according to her, it was better to die that way than in any other way at the hands of the Nazis. There were few Nazi guards in this camp, so they couldn't constantly watch what the workers were doing. The workers, in turn, did everything they could to sabotage the products. It is known that by the end of the war, German planes had problems with the glue that held the wings together, causing many of them to crash when the glue came apart. This was due to the fact that prisoners would constantly urinate in it to spoil its properties. The worst thing, though, which she noted that few people talk about, was that labor camps were a hotbed of sexual violence against women and children. Thank you for the response and the great story. Was there anything she liked there? Anything that made her happy? If I had to summarize it, no. Here is her response. After a while, you don't feel joy or fear. You just perform your task like a machine, and when you're done, you rest and eat the food they give you. Perhaps you share some of that food with your child if you think you're in a position to share with them and not die yourself. The only thing you think about are the short moments when no one is around or watching, and you wonder what you can do to regain even a little bit of control over your life. As I understand it, women in the camps were treated very badly, as though they weren't even human. So, how does your great-grandmother feel about Germany now? I know some survivors who still feel the same bitterness as the day they were liberated. In general, she is quite dissatisfied with how the German education system covers this issue. I firmly believe that the accumulated resentment of generations was the cause of the Holocaust. However, she still believes that many more Germans should have been executed at the end of the war. How did this affect her later life, and how does she live now? To be honest, her health is stronger than most people I know. After her liberation, her life was still quite tough until the 1960s. First, she was forcibly sent to Palestine, which was under British rule. Many countries didn't allow Jewish survivors to return after being freed from the camps and sent them against their will to Palestine. Then came the War for the Independence of Israel, and she participated in the Israeli War of Independence. A few years later, she moved to the United States, got married, attended college, and by the mid-1960s, she became one of the first women to earn a doctorate and teach in her field in the USA. What were the guards like? Were they really heartless bastards without emotions, or did they have any sympathy for the prisoners? Even if they had a shred of sympathy, it was dangerous to show it, otherwise they would be sent to the front. So, in reality, all the guards were brutal. Did her husband survive, and what happened to her children? Her husband and one of her 2 daughters died. The second daughter survived. As for the rest, only one of her 6 brothers and sisters survived, the rest perished. Which part of Europe did she live in before the war? Did she return to her hometown to see if anyone from her family survived? Her family was from Poland. After the war, they weren't allowed to return. Many Jews were denied the right to return to Poland after the war. Even if they were born there, they were sent elsewhere. After the war, Warsaw was one of the most destroyed cities in the world. Did you watch any movies that accurately or inaccurately depict the concentration camps? Can you even watch movies related to this topic, or do they stir up too many terrifying emotions? Schindler's List and Shutter Island are very good films and are not hard for her to watch. However, the movie Life is Beautiful stirred up strong feelings of anger and sorrow in her. Hi, I'm from Poland and I have a question. First, I want to thank you and your grandmother for giving us the opportunity to ask questions. It's great that we have a chance to talk to someone who went through such dark times. My grandmother also survived World War II, and if I'm not mistaken, she was 16 when the war began and they took her to Germany to work for the German people. So here are my questions. How did the Poles treat the Jews? For example, we are very proud of helping Jews in Poland. If I remember correctly, Poland was the only country where helping a Jew meant death for you and your family, yet it still has the highest number of people recognized as righteous among the nations. But how is it really? Note, the title righteous among the nations is given to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Nazi occupation of Europe during the Holocaust. In most cases, Poles gladly helped Jews, but both the government before and after the war looked poorly upon it. After the war, many Jews were not allowed to return to Poland, even though they were born there. Did prisoners in the camp form friendships, or were they mostly focused on surviving themselves and helping their family? In the first camp in Poland, most people tried to help their family members survive. Later, when she was transferred to a salt mine where the Germans used forced labor to build Heinkel 162 planes, women and children were mostly sent there. Women, in any case, would form bonds and try to save their children's lives. Each adult woman would give part of her daily rations to the children. Was she religious before and after the camps, and how does she feel about Orthodox Judaism? Did she receive any education before the war? Before the camps, she was more religious. Her father was a rabbi in Poland. She is still religious but now relates to religion more as part of Jewish culture. Honestly, she feels quite cold toward Orthodox Judaism. Before the war, she received an education as a secretary and bookkeeper. How old is your great-grandmother now? She will turn 107 next month on the 20th. Does she suffer from PTSD, flashbacks, or panic attacks? If so, how does she cope with them? Some smells cause her strong anxiety. What is her favorite dish? Who was her first love? And finally, what recipe does she think everyone should know? I think that at 106, she knows some great recipes. You could even share a couple because I'm sure they'll be amazing. Her favorite dish is a well-made carrot cake. Her first love was her first husband. As for recipes, she can teach how to preserve food and how to smoke meat. She loves making homemade sausage. What does she think about comparisons between Trump and Hitler? The similarity between Trump and Hitler is quite high, but in reality, Trump is more comparable to Mussolini. What is the most pleasant childhood memory she has? She remembers the dogs. Her family raised dogs and she was always a huge dog lover. She used to train them as shepherd dogs, and that's something she fondly remembers. Can you ask her what life advice she would give us? It saddens me that so many people no longer recognize the atrocities that happened during that time. I am grateful to both of you for creating this track, and I would also like to know what the day of her liberation was like. I'd really love to know what she felt at that moment. How did the process go? Was there panic? She never found panic helpful in any situation. You can break down and cry once everything is over. Regarding the day of her liberation, she remembers how the German soldiers came to the place where she worked and told the guards that American forces were just a few kilometers away. The guards wanted to kill the prisoners but offered them to the soldiers. The soldiers told them not to kill anyone because the Americans had already shot some guards after discovering bodies in small POW camps. So the guards just left. Later, the Americans arrived, did everything they could to feed the prisoners, give them water, and provide medical assistance. The camp only had women and children. Some soldiers began asking them about the planes at the factory. In fact, the prisoners stayed there for several more days. Thank you very much for watching. Maybe some of your relatives have similar stories, so if that's the case, share them with us in the comments. Don't forget to watch our other episodes.